I stood in the center of my father's study, surrounded by 47 people who'd come to celebrate his retirement from Bradford Industries, the manufacturing company he'd built over 35 years. The room smelled of expensive whiskey and self-congratulation. My champagne sat untouched in my hand, warming against my palm, while my father's voice boomed through the space. "And I have to thank my son, Marcus, for agreeing to take over the company," he said, raising his glass toward my brother, who stood beside him looking smug. "I know it's a big responsibility, but a man needs a legacy he can trust, a son to carry forward what his father built." I watched my mother's face carefully. She glanced at me, then quickly away, her smile fixed and brittle. No one else looked at me. Not the executives who'd worked under my leadership for 3 years. Not the board members I'd presented quarterly reports to. Not my uncle, who'd watched me grow up dreaming of this moment. "Marcus will take Bradford Industries into the future," my father continued. "He has the vision, the strength, the natural authority that a leader needs. These aren't things you can teach. A man either has them or he doesn't." The implication was clear. The words he didn't say hung in the air like smoke. Women don't have them. My daughter doesn't have them. I'd been Bradford Industries' chief operating officer for 3 years. I'd increased efficiency by 37%. I'd negotiated contracts that had saved the company millions. I'd restructured departments, mentored new managers, and worked 70-hour weeks to prove myself worthy of the legacy my father was now handing to my younger brother, who'd spent the last decade bouncing between failed startups and 6-month stints at companies that always found reasons to let him go. "To Marcus," someone shouted, and the room erupted in applause. I clapped too, keeping my face neutral, professional. Inside, I was calculating. 3 years ago, my father had promised me the company. He'd sat me down in his same study and said, "You've proven yourself, Alexandra. When I retire, Bradford Industries will be yours." I'd believed him. I'd turned down offers from competitors, passed on opportunities to start my own firm, dedicated every waking hour to making his company thrive. And now, in front of 47 witnesses, he was giving everything to Marcus. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out discreetly, angling it so no one could see the screen. An email from my lawyer, all documents finalized, ready to file when you give the word. I'd known this was coming for 6 months, not the exact date, not the specific betrayal, but I'd sensed the shift in my father's attitude. The way he'd started including Marcus in meetings I'd organized. The comments about family legacy and passing the torch to the next generation of Bradford men. The casual dismissals of my achievements, followed by exaggerated praise for Marcus's minor contributions. So I'd prepared, quietly, carefully, in ways my father and brother would never suspect, because they'd fundamentally underestimated what I was capable of. "Alexandra," my father's voice cut through my thoughts. "Come here, sweetheart. Say something to celebrate your brother's new position." I walked through the crowd, feeling their eyes on me. Pity in some faces, satisfaction in others. People who'd never liked working under a woman and were relieved to have their natural order restored. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor, each step measured and deliberate. I stood beside my father and brother, looked out at the gathered crowd, and smiled. "I'm so proud of Marcus," I said, my voice steady and warm. Taking over a company is a huge responsibility. It requires vision, strategic thinking, financial acumen, and the ability to make tough decisions when necessary. Marcus nodded, accepting what he thought was genuine praise. "I have complete confidence," I continued, "that Marcus will run Bradford Industries exactly as he's capable of running it." A few people chuckled, missing the edge in my words. But my father heard it. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying my face for signs of rebellion or hurt. I gave him nothing but a daughter's supportive smile. "Thank you, Alex," Marcus said, using the nickname I'd asked him to stop using years ago. "I know this might be disappointing for you, but you'll still have a place at the company." Dad and I discussed it. You can stay on as a senior advisor or maybe head of HR. Something that suits your strengths. Something that suits my strengths. Code for something appropriately feminine, non-threatening, easily dismissed. That's generous, I said. But I've actually been considering other opportunities. I'll let you know. My father's hand tightened on his whiskey glass. He hadn't expected that. He'd assumed I'd accept whatever scraps they offered, grateful to remain in the family business in any capacity. It was the first crack in his certainty, and I watched him try to process what my calm response might mean. The party continued for another 2 hours. I circulated, congratulating people, making small talk, playing the role of the gracious daughter who is happy for her brother's success. All the while, I was watching, observing who seemed genuinely happy about the transition, who looked uncomfortable, who avoided my eyes entirely. These were people I'd worked with for 3 years. Some I'd promoted, some I'd mentored, some I'd trusted with confidential information about company operations, financial strategies, future plans. I was cataloging their reactions, noting who would be loyal to Marcus out of genuine respect, and who would follow him simply because he was the boss's son. I left at 10 o'clock, kissing my mother's cheek and shaking my father's hand. Congratulations on your retirement, Dad. You've earned it. Alexandra, he said, holding my hand a moment longer than necessary. We should talk, soon, about your role going forward. Absolutely. Let's schedule something next week. I wouldn't be at that meeting, but he didn't need to know that yet. In my car, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. The night was cold, and I could see my breath fogging the windshield. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline I'd been suppressing finally breaking through. 6 months of preparation, 6 months of documenting, planning, building something my father and brother knew nothing about. And tonight, watching my father publicly humiliate me by giving my legacy to Marcus had been the confirmation I'd needed. Not that I'd been wrong about his intentions. I'd known that for months, but that I was absolutely justified in what I was about to do. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to my lawyer. File everything Monday morning. We proceed as planned. Then I drove home to my apartment, poured myself a real drink, and reviewed the folders I'd been compiling. Documents, emails, contracts, business plans, evidence of every decision I'd made that had improved Bradford Industries, proof of every mistake Marcus had made at previous jobs, every failed venture, every questionable business practice that my father had overlooked because boys will be boys and he'll mature eventually. And most importantly, the articles of incorporation for my own company, Sterling Tech Solutions, founded 4 months ago, quietly capitalized, staffed by consultants I'd been vetting for months. A company positioned to compete directly with Bradford Industries in their most profitable sectors. My father had said women don't run businesses. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was, but I was getting ahead of myself. The real story had started 6 months earlier, with a conversation I'd overheard outside my father's office. A conversation that had changed everything. 6 months before my father's retirement party. I'd stayed late at the office working on a proposal for a major client. It was after 8 p.m., and I'd thought I was alone on the executive floor. Then I'd heard voices coming from my father's office. The door was slightly ajar, and I'd paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop, but caught by the sound of my own name. Alexandra's doing fine work, my father had said. I can't deny that. The efficiency improvements, the cost savings. She's exceeded expectations. I'd felt a surge of hope. Finally, he was acknowledging what I'd accomplished. But that was my Uncle Thomas, my father's younger brother, and the company's CFO. But I can't hand over the company to her, Tom. I just can't. When I think about Bradford Industries' future, I see Marcus at the helm. A man, someone who'll command respect, who clients will take seriously, who can make the hard decisions without getting emotional about it. Marcus has failed at every job he's ever had, Uncle Thomas had said, and I'd silently thanked him for speaking the truth. He's young. He's still finding himself. But he has the Bradford name, and more importantly, he's my son. The business world is still a man's world, Tom. You know that as well as I do. I can't put Alexandra in a position where she'll constantly have to fight for respect she should automatically receive. It wouldn't be fair to her. So instead, you'll give everything to Marcus and hope he doesn't destroy it? I'll mentor him, guide him, and Alexandra will still be there in a supporting role. She's good at operations, at the details. Let Marcus handle the vision and leadership. She can make his ideas work. I'd stood frozen in that hallway, my proposal clutched in suddenly numb hands. My father's reasoning wasn't about my capabilities. It was about his own outdated beliefs about gender and leadership. He genuinely believed he was protecting me by denying me what I'd earned, what he'd promised me. Uncle Thomas had tried arguing further, but my father had been immovable. My mind's made up. Marcus takes over when I retire. We'll structure it so Alexandra doesn't feel pushed aside, maybe give her a title promotion with the reorganization. But the company goes to my son. I'd walked away quietly, taken the elevator down to the parking garage, and sat in my car for an hour, processing what I'd heard. The betrayal wasn't hot and sudden. It was cold and calculated. My father had been lying to me for years, letting me believe I had a future at Bradford Industries while planning to hand everything to Marcus all along. Anger without strategy was just noise, so I'd started planning. The next morning, I'd scheduled a meeting with my lawyer, Olivia Chen. We'd met at a coffee shop far from the office, somewhere no one from Bradford Industries would see us. I need to start my own company, I told her, something that can compete with Bradford Industries. But I need to do it without anyone knowing. Not my father, not Marcus, not anyone at the company. Can you help me? Olivia had smiled. The kind of smile that suggested she'd been waiting for me to ask this question. Tell me what you're thinking. Over coffee that had gone cold while we talked, I'd outlined my vision. Sterling Tech Solutions would focus on the same manufacturing sector as Bradford Industries, but with a modern, tech-forward approach. We'd offer consulting services, process optimization, supply chain management, all the things I'd been doing at Bradford, but without the constraints of my father's old-fashioned methods. You'll need capital, Olivia had said, clients, staff, and you'll need to do all of this while still working at Bradford so no one suspects. I have savings, and I've been approached by venture capital firms before. As for clients and staff, I know people, good people who've been frustrated with how Bradford operates, who jump at the chance to do things differently. Your father will see this as a betrayal. My father is already betraying me. I'm just beating him to it. Olivia had nodded, understanding immediately. Let's do it. But Alexandra, if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Legal, ethical, ironclad. No shortcuts, no gray areas. When your father realizes what you've done, he'll look for any way to challenge it. We make sure there isn't one. That had been the beginning. Over the next 6 months, I'd built Sterling Tech Solutions piece by piece, always carefully, always secretly. I'd registered the company under an LLC structure that didn't immediately reveal my ownership. Some had committed immediately, trusting my vision and excited about the opportunity. I'd secured office space in a co-working facility downtown, nowhere near Bradford's headquarters. I'd hired my first 3 employees, an operations specialist, a technology consultant, and a business development manager. All 3 were people I'd worked with before, people who knew my capabilities and believed in what we were building. And I'd started approaching clients, not Bradford's current clients. That would have been unethical and potentially illegal. But prospects Bradford had passed on, companies in adjacent industries, organizations that needed exactly what Sterling Tech Solutions offered. I'd scheduled meetings during my lunch breaks and after work, always careful to keep my Bradford and Sterling activities completely separate. By the time my father announced his retirement party, Sterling Tech had signed 4 clients, hired 8 employees, and secured a contract worth $500,000. We weren't publicly launched yet, keeping our website in coming soon mode, our social media dormant. But we were real, viable, and ready to compete. The night after I'd overheard my father's conversation with Uncle Thomas, I'd started documenting everything. Every project I'd led at Bradford, every decision I'd made, every success I'd achieved. I'd created a detailed record of my contributions to the company, with dates, financial impacts, and outcomes. Legally, this was my work history, evidence of my capabilities. Practically, it was ammunition for when my father tried to diminish what I'd accomplished. I'd also started documenting Marcus's history. Failed startups he'd bankrupted, jobs he'd been fired from or quietly asked to leave, business plans he'd presented that had been rejected for good reasons, social media posts where he'd made questionable statements about business ethics and management philosophy. All public information, all carefully archived. I wasn't planning to destroy Marcus, but he just needs time. What Marcus needed was competence, but no one wanted to say that out loud. I'd also started having quiet conversations with key Bradford employees. Not recruiting them away, that would come later. Just maintaining relationships, letting them know I valued their work, that I saw their potential. Planting seeds that would bloom after I left. You're really good at logistics optimization. She'd invited me to lunch 3 months before the retirement party. Just the two of us at her favorite restaurant. "Are you okay, Alexandra?" she'd asked, studying my face. "You seem different lately. Distant." "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with work." "Your father loves you. You know that, right?" I'd taken a sip of water, choosing my words carefully. "I know Dad loves his version of who he thinks I should be." She'd flinched. "That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time he asked about my career goals? When's the last time he acknowledged that I might want to leave Bradford Industries someday? He worries about you, the stress of running a company, the pressure. He doesn't want you to sacrifice your personal life, but it's fine for Marcus to sacrifice his personal life. Or is it only a sacrifice when a woman does it?" My mother had looked away, unable to answer. She knew I was right, but admitting it meant confronting truths about her marriage and her own choices that she wasn't ready to face. "Just promise me you'll be careful," she'd said finally. "Whatever you're planning, whatever you're thinking, be careful." So she'd known, or suspected, but she hadn't warned my father, and for that, I was grateful. "They've been coasting on reputation for years. You have the insider knowledge and the talent to disrupt the sector." They'd offered $2 million in funding in exchange for a 25% stake in Sterling Tech. It was a good deal, one that would let me scale up faster than I'd planned. I'd accepted, with conditions that protected my control of the company and its direction. With that funding secured, I'd hired 5 more employees, including a CFO and a marketing director. We'd finalized our website, prepared our launch materials, and set a date for going public with the company, the Monday after my father's retirement party. The timing was deliberate. Let my father announce Marcus's appointment. Let them celebrate. Then Alexandra Bradford passed over for the family business, striking out on her own with funding and credentials and a team of talented professionals who chose to work with her. Now, sitting in my apartment the night after that retirement party, I reviewed everything one more time. My documentation of Bradford's operations, Sterling Tech's business plan, the contracts we'd signed, the employees we'd hired, the funding we'd secured, the market analysis showing how we'd compete. It was all there, months of careful planning ready to execute. My phone rang. "Uncle Thomas." "Alexandra," he said when I answered. "We need to talk." About what you're planning. About Sterling Tech Solutions." My heart stopped. "How do you know about that?" "I'm the CFO of a major manufacturing company, and I've been in this industry for 30 years. Did you really think I wouldn't hear about a new competitor being funded by Vincent Holdings?" "Alexandra, I saw the filing. Your name is on the incorporation documents. I've been so careful, but Uncle Thomas was more connected than I'd realized. Are you calling to try to stop me? No, I'm calling to tell you I'm proud of you and to warn you that your father is going to lose his mind when he finds out. I met Uncle Thomas for breakfast the next morning at a diner 40 minutes outside the city, far enough that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth with coffee and what looked like untouched pancakes. "You look tired," he said as I slid into the seat across from him. "I haven't been sleeping well." "I imagine not. Building a company while pretending everything's fine at your current job can't be easy." He pushed a folder across the table. I did some research. Sterling Tech Solutions incorporated 4 months ago. 5 initial clients, 12 employees, $2 million in venture funding. Impressive work, especially considering you did it all under the radar. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of Sterling Tech's public filings, our website drafts, even LinkedIn profiles of the people I'd hired. Uncle Thomas had been thorough. "Are you going to tell Dad?" I asked. "Should I?" "That depends. Whose side are you on?" He laughed, a dry sound. "There are no sides here, Alexandra. Just a family tearing itself apart over outdated ideas and male pride." He took a sip of coffee. "I tried to talk your father out of this, multiple times. I told him you were the obvious choice to run Bradford Industries, that Marcus wasn't ready, might never be ready. But your father has this vision in his head of how things should be, and facts don't matter when ego is involved. So why are you here? Because I want you to understand what's about to happen. When your father finds out about Sterling Tech, and he will find out, he's going to feel betrayed. Not because you're wrong to start your own company, but because his own choices will suddenly have consequences he didn't anticipate. He'll lash out. He'll try to paint you as disloyal, vindictive, petty. He'll tell everyone who will listen that you're trying to destroy the family business out of jealousy. Let him. I'm not doing anything wrong. Legally, no. You've been careful about that, I can tell. But morally, in his mind, you're committing an unforgivable sin. You're challenging his authority, his judgment, his worldview. And your father doesn't handle being challenged well. I thought about that. My father had built Bradford Industries from almost nothing, growing it through determination and hard work. He'd earned his success. But somewhere along the way, success had become confused with infallibility. He'd started believing that his way was the only way, that his instincts were always right, that anyone who disagreed with him was either ignorant or insubordinate. "What about you?" I asked Uncle Thomas. "What happens to you when this all comes out?" "I'm retiring anyway, 6 months after your father. I was going to tell him next week, but this might accelerate my timeline." He smiled. "And between you and me, I've been looking for consulting opportunities. If Sterling Tech needed a part-time CFO with industry experience, I might be available." I stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. Alexandra, I've worked with you for 3 years. You're brilliant, strategic, and you actually listen to people instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. Those are rare qualities in leadership. If you're building a company that values competence over tradition, I want to be part of it. Dad will see that as the ultimate betrayal. Your father, seeing things clearly, has never been his strength." Uncle Thomas leaned forward. "Look, I love my brother, but I also see his flaws. He's letting those flaws cost him the best executive Bradford Industries has ever had. I'm not going to let loyalty to him stop me from supporting you." We spent the next hour going over Sterling Tech's business plan. Uncle Thomas had insights about market positioning and financial projections that were invaluable. He pointed out opportunities I'd missed and risks I needed to mitigate. By the time breakfast was over, I'd hired him as Sterling Tech's advisory CFO, starting after his retirement from Bradford Industries. "One more thing," he said as we were leaving. "Your father's retirement package is tied to Bradford's performance. He negotiated a pension that pays out based on the company's annual profits. If Bradford struggles under Marcus's leadership, your father's income drops significantly. How significantly? If profits drop below baseline by more than 20%, his pension gets cut in half. If the company goes into sustained losses, it disappears entirely. Uncle Thomas put on his coat. I'm not telling you this to influence your business decisions. Sterling Tech should compete aggressively and do what's best for your company. I'm just making sure you understand that the consequences of Bradford's potential failure will hit your father personally. I processed this information as we walked to our cars. My father's financial security was tied to the company he was handing over to my incompetent brother. If Sterling Tech succeeded in taking market share from Bradford, if Marcus proved unable to handle the pressure of leadership, my father would pay the price for his own poor judgment. There was a poetic justice in that, but it also complicated my feelings. I wanted to prove my father wrong. I wanted to build something successful that would force him to acknowledge his mistake. But did I want to destroy his retirement security in the process? I can see you thinking, Uncle Thomas said. Wrestling with whether it's fair to compete against Bradford knowing your father's finances are at stake, is it? Alexandra, your father made his choices. He chose to structure his pension that way because he was confident Marcus would succeed. He chose to pass you over despite your proven track record. Those were his decisions, and he gets to live with the consequences. You're not responsible for protecting him from his own poor judgment. But he's still my father. Yes. And you're still his daughter, a fact he seems to have forgotten when he gave your birthright to your brother. Uncle Thomas unlocked his car. Build your company, compete fairly, succeed based on merit. If that success happens to prove your father's beliefs wrong and costs him financially, maybe he'll learn something valuable about respecting women's capabilities. I drove home thinking about that conversation, about loyalty and justice, about family and fairness, about the line between righteous competition and deliberate sabotage. I didn't want to destroy my father, but I also wasn't going to hold back on building Sterling Tech just to protect him from consequences he'd set in motion himself. That afternoon, I called a meeting with Sterling Tech's core team. We gathered in our small office, 7 people sitting around a conference table, reviewing our launch strategy. We go public Monday, I said. Website live, social media active, press release distributed. We announced Sterling Tech Solutions as a new player in the manufacturing optimization space, ready to compete for clients and talent. And Bradford Industries? That was Miguel, our operations specialist. How are we handling the fact that our CEO used to be their COO? We're not hiding it. It's public information. But we're also not making it the story. The story is that Sterling Tech brings fresh thinking and modern approaches to an industry that's been stuck in outdated models. We're not anti-Bradford, we're pro-innovation. Bradford will see us as a threat, said Keisha, our business development manager. Good, they should. We are a threat. But we're also a legitimate competitor offering better services. If Bradford can't handle competition, that's their problem, not ours. We spent 2 hours refining our messaging, our launch timeline, our target client list. By the end of the meeting, everyone was energized and ready. This wasn't just a startup. This was a movement, a statement about merit versus tradition, about what leadership could look like when it wasn't constrained by outdated assumptions. That evening, my mother called. Her voice was tight with worry. Alexandra, I heard something today about a new company, Sterling Tech Solutions. Someone said you're involved. I'm not involved, Mom. I own it. I'm the CEO and founder. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, sweetheart, what have you done? I've built something I can be proud of, something that's mine, not just something I'm allowed to participate in because of my last name. Your father is going to be devastated. Dad is going to be angry that I'm not playing by his rules. That's different from devastation. He loves you, Alexandra. He loves the version of me that stays quiet and accepts whatever he decides is best. The real me, the one who wants to lead and build and succeed on her own terms. He doesn't seem to love that version very much. My mother made a sound, somewhere between a sigh and a sob. This is going to tear the family apart. The family was already broken, Mom. I'm just making it visible. She tried to argue further, but I was done defending my choices to people who'd watched me be diminished and said nothing. I told her I loved her, which was true, and that I hoped she'd understand eventually, which might not be true, and ended the call. Saturday passed in a blur of final preparations. Website checks, social media posts scheduling, press release approvals. I practiced my talking points for the media interviews I knew were coming. I reviewed contracts one more time with Olivia, making sure everything was legally perfect. Sunday, I allowed myself to rest. I went for a long run, cooked a proper meal, called a few friends I'd been neglecting. I needed to be centered for what was coming. The launch would bring attention, questions, probably conflict with my father and Marcus. I needed to be ready to handle all of it with grace and strength. That evening, I drafted an email to my father and Marcus. Simple, professional, informative. Dad and Marcus, I wanted you to hear this from me directly before it becomes public. I founded a company called Sterling Tech Solutions, which will be launching publicly tomorrow. We focus on manufacturing optimization and process improvement consulting. This decision reflects my career goals and my desire to build something of my own. I hope you can understand and respect this choice. I'll be resigning from Bradford Industries effective immediately. My transition documents are ready, and I've briefed my team on ongoing projects. I wish you both success with Bradford's future. Alexandra, I scheduled it to send Monday morning at 9 a.m., 1 hour after Sterling Tech's public launch. By the time they read it, the news would already be spreading through the industry. That night, I barely slept. Adrenaline and anticipation kept me wired, my mind racing through scenarios and responses. By 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee, watching the sun rise over the city while I reviewed my notes one final time. At 7 a.m., I put on my best suit, the navy one that made me look powerful and professional. I did my makeup carefully, knowing I'd be photographed. At 8 a.m., I drove to Sterling Tech's office, where the team was already gathering. "Ready?" Miguel asked as I walked in. "Ready," I confirmed. At 8:30, we pushed the button that made our website live. At 8:45, our social media accounts went active, with coordinated posts announcing Sterling Tech's launch. At 9 a.m., the press release hit the wire services, and at 9:05, my phone started ringing. The first call was from a reporter at the Business Journal who'd been covering Bradford Industries for years. "Ms. Bradford, I just saw the Sterling Tech announcement. Can you comment on the timing? Launching your company right after your father's retirement party?" "The timing is coincidental," I said, the lie smooth and practiced. "Sterling Tech has been in development for months. My father's retirement didn't influence my decision to launch my own company. But you're competing directly with Bradford Industries. Doesn't that create a conflict of interest? I'm no longer employed by Bradford Industries as of today. There's no conflict. Sterling Tech is a separate entity offering consulting services in the manufacturing sector. We're confident there's room in the market for multiple players. Your brother Marcus just took over as CEO of Bradford. Have you spoken with him about Sterling Tech?" Marcus and my father were informed this morning. This is a professional decision, not a personal one. The interview continued for 10 minutes, the reporter probing for family drama, for signs of conflict, for the story behind the story. I gave him nothing but professional responses and clear boundaries. When the call ended, 3 more reporters were already waiting. I spent the next 2 hours doing interviews, phone calls, emails, one video call with a technology blog. The questions were variations on the same themes. Why now? Why compete with your family? Isn't this a betrayal? I answered each one calmly, professionally, steering the narrative towards Sterling Tech's innovative approach and away from family dynamics. At 11 a.m., My father called. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Marcus called. Also voicemail. Then my mother, and I felt guilty about ignoring her. But I was in the middle of another interview and couldn't break focus. By noon, Sterling Tech had received 17 inquiries from potential clients, 5 emails from job applicants, and 3 calls from investors wanting to learn more about our company. The launch was succeeding beyond our projections. I finally checked my voicemails during lunch. My father's message was exactly what I'd expected. Alexandra, what the hell is this? Call me immediately. We need to talk about this betrayal of trust and family loyalty. Marcus's message was shorter. Really, Alex? You're seriously doing this? Dad's right about you. My mother's message made my chest tight. Sweetheart, please call me. I'm worried about you. Your father is very upset. Can we talk? Please? I called her back during a break between meetings. She answered on the first ring. Alexandra, thank God. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Busy, but fine. The launch went well. Your father is furious. He's been calling you all morning. Marcus is upset too. They feel blindsided. They were informed at the same time as everyone else. There was no blindside. You know what I mean? This feels like a deliberate attack on the family. I took a breath, reminding myself that my mother had been conditioned to prioritize peace over justice, harmony over honesty. Mom, I'm starting a business. That's not an attack. It's a career decision. If Dad sees it as an attack, that says more about his insecurity than about my intentions. He gave you opportunities at Bradford Industries. He trusted you with important work. And this is how you repay him? He gave me opportunities to prove myself, and I proved myself over and over, and it still wasn't enough because I wasn't his son. You know that's true, Mom. You were there for every conversation where he dismissed my potential because of outdated ideas about gender and leadership. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what about his pension? Someone told me it's tied to Bradford's performance. If your company takes business away from Bradford, your father could lose income. So she knew. Dad structured his pension that way because he was confident Bradford would thrive under Marcus's leadership. If he's wrong about that, the consequences are his responsibility, not mine. So you're willing to destroy your father's financial security to prove a point? I'm building a company based on merit and innovation. If Bradford can't compete, if Marcus isn't capable of maintaining the company's success, that's not my fault. I'm not responsible for protecting Dad from the consequences of his own poor judgment. This is going to destroy our family, Alexandra. No, Mom. Dad's sexism and Marcus's incompetence are going to destroy the family. I'm just making it visible instead of pretending everything's fine. She started crying, and I felt the familiar guilt that came from making my mother uncomfortable. But I was done managing other people's emotions at the expense of my own well-being. I have to go, Mom. I have another meeting. I love you. I hope you can continue support me eventually, but I understand if you can't. I ended the call before she could respond, before she could make me feel worse about choosing myself over their 7 employees at desks, all pretending not to listen. This confrontation needed to be private. Send him to the conference room. I'll be there in a moment. I took my time gathering my laptop and notes, centering myself emotionally. My father was here to intimidate me, to make me feel guilty, to try to reclaim control. I needed to stay calm, professional, unmoved by whatever tactics he employed. He was standing by the window when I entered, his back to the door, shoulders rigid with tension. I closed the door behind me and sat down at the conference table, deliberately not standing to face him. A power move, one he would notice. You lied to me, he said without turning around. For months, you lied to me. I didn't lie. I never told you I wasn't starting a company. You never asked. Don't play semantic games with me, Alexandra. You know exactly what you did. You built a competitor while working at Bradford, using knowledge you gained from your position there. That's not just unethical. It might be illegal. I was careful about that. Sterling Tech was built using my own knowledge and experience, not Bradford's proprietary information. I've been over every detail with lawyers. There's nothing illegal or even questionably ethical about what I've done. He finally turned to face me, and I was shocked by how old he looked. The retirement party had been 3 days ago, but he seemed to have aged years. His face was drawn, his eyes bloodshot. "Why?" he asked, and his voice cracked slightly. "Why would you do this to me? To our family? Because you gave my inheritance to Marcus. Because you promised me Bradford Industries, and then decided my gender made me unworthy of that promise. Because you chose tradition over merit, and I decided I wouldn't wait around hoping you'd change your mind. I was protecting you. The stress of running a company, the pressure, the constant scrutiny, I didn't want you to sacrifice your personal life the way I sacrificed mine. That's a convenient lie you've been telling yourself, Dad. But I heard what you told Uncle Thomas 6 months ago. You said the business world is a man's world, that clients wouldn't respect me, that Marcus needed to be the one to carry forward the family legacy because he's your son. You didn't mention protecting my personal life then. You mentioned my gender." His face flushed. "You were eavesdropping?" "I was working late and overheard a conversation about my own future. A future you were planning without my input." I kept my voice level, refusing to match his rising anger. "Everything I've done since then has been a response to learning the truth about what you really think of me and my capabilities. I built Bradford Industries from nothing. I gave you opportunities. I paid for your education, your training, everything you needed to succeed. And this is how you repay me? By trying to destroy what I built? I'm not trying to destroy anything. I'm building something of my own. If Bradford can't compete with Sterling Tech, that's a Bradford problem, not a Sterling Tech problem. You're stealing my clients. I haven't contacted a single Bradford client. Sterling Tech's clients are companies Bradford either rejected or never pursued. Everything we're doing is legitimate competition." He slammed his hand on the conference table, making me jump despite my best efforts to stay calm. "You're my daughter. You owe me loyalty. You owe me respect. Instead, you're humiliating me in front of the entire industry. I don't owe you my career. I don't owe you my ambitions. I don't owe you acceptance of being passed over for someone less qualified just because he's male." I stood up, meeting his eyes directly. "You made your choice, Dad. You chose Marcus over me, tradition over talent, your ego over my future. Now, you get to live with the consequences. Your mother is devastated. Your brother feels betrayed. This family is falling apart because of your selfishness. No, this family is falling apart because you valued appearances over honesty, because you let Marcus coast through life without accountability, while I had to prove myself repeatedly, because you built your retirement pension on the assumption that Marcus would be You'll burn through your venture capital, lose your clients, and end up exactly where you would have been if you just stayed at Bradford in the position we offered you. Maybe, or maybe, Sterling Tech will succeed because it's built on merit instead of tradition, because we value innovation over this is how we've always done it, because we hire the best people regardless of their gender or their last name. Time will tell. I'm done here." He walked to the door, then paused. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Alexandra. When you realize that, don't expect me to welcome you back with open arms." "I won't," I said, "because I'm not coming back." He left without another word, and I sank back into my chair, my hands shaking from adrenaline and suppressed emotion. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see my team pretending to work while obviously having heard most of that confrontation. Miguel came in a few minutes later. "Boss, you okay?" "I'm fine. Just family drama. That was intense. Your father is..." He searched for a diplomatic word. "Old-fashioned, stubborn, convinced he's right about everything." I smiled weakly. "But he's also scared. Sterling Tech threatens his worldview and his legacy. That's actually a good sign for us. It means we're doing something right. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of work and worry. I processed what my father had said, looking for legitimate concerns hidden in his anger. Was I being selfish? Was I destroying my family? Was Sterling Tech actually capable of succeeding? Or was I chasing a fantasy fueled by hurt pride? But then I looked at our client list, our team, our business plan. Sterling Tech was real. We had contracts, revenue, a clear path to profitability. This wasn't a fantasy. It was a legitimate business built on solid fundamentals. That evening, Uncle Thomas called. "I heard about your father's visit. How bad was it?" He threatened me, told me I was destroying the family, said Sterling Tech would fail and I'd regret everything. Sounds like he's scared. That's what Miguel said, because it's true. Your father built his entire identity on Bradford Industries. Now his daughter is proving she doesn't need his company to succeed. And his son is about to demonstrate he can't maintain what your father built. That's terrifying for a man whose self-worth is tied to being the patriarch of a successful business dynasty. Should I feel bad for him? You can feel compassion without feeling guilt. Your father made choices that led to this moment. He's responsible for those choices. You're just living your own life on your own terms. Uncle Thomas paused. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You did what I never had the courage to do. You stood up to him. That meant more than I'd expected. Thank you. One more thing. I officially submitted my retirement notice to Bradford today. Your father tried to talk me out of it, said I was abandoning the family in their time of need. I told him my retirement had been planned for months and had nothing to do with Sterling Tech, which is technically true, even if the timing is convenient. When do you officially join Sterling Tech? 3 months. That's my notice period at Bradford. But I can advise informally before then, just nothing that creates a conflict of interest. After we hung up, I made a list of everyone I needed to talk to. Employees who might have questions, clients who might have concerns, industry contacts who might be hearing rumors. I spent 2 hours making calls, reassuring people, controlling the narrative. At 9 p.m., exhausted, I finally went home. My apartment felt different somehow, emptier. I'd sacrificed relationships and social life to build my career at Bradford, and now I'd sacrificed family harmony to build Sterling Tech. What did I have left besides work? My phone buzzed with a text. My college roommate, Priya, who I hadn't talked to in months, saw the Sterling Tech announcement. Congrats. About time you stopped letting your dad hold you back. Proud of you. Let's celebrate this weekend. Then another text from my former mentor at business school. Alexandra, just heard the news. Brilliant move. If you ever need advice or connections, call me. Another from a colleague I'd worked with years ago. Sterling Tech looks amazing. Are you hiring? I'd love to talk about opportunities. Over the next hour, I received 17 messages of support and congratulations. People who'd watched me struggle at Bradford, who'd known I was capable of more, who were excited to see me strike out on my own. Not family, but something else. A chosen community of people who valued me for my capabilities, not my last name. Maybe I wasn't as alone as I felt. The first week after Sterling Tech's launch was chaos. Media interviews, client meetings, investor calls, team briefings. We operated at a pace that was exhilarating and exhausting. By Friday, we'd signed 2 new clients, hired 3 more employees, and secured a second round of venture funding. Bradford Industries responded exactly as I'd expected. Marcus gave an interview to the Business Journal where he dismissed Sterling Tech as a small startup that doesn't understand the complexity of the manufacturing sector. My father released a statement about loyalty and family values that was clearly aimed at me, without mentioning me by name. But the industry response was more interesting. 3 Bradford employees reached out to me quietly. asking about opportunities at Sterling Tech. Two major clients my father had taken for granted started asking questions about our services. An industry association invited me to speak at their annual conference about innovation in manufacturing. The message was clear. People had been waiting for someone to challenge Bradford's dominance. I just happened to be the one who did it. Marcus made his first major mistake 2 weeks after taking over as CEO. He announced a restructuring initiative that eliminated 30 jobs, mostly in middle management, positions I'd created to improve efficiency. The industry saw it for what it was, Marcus trying to put his stamp on the company by undoing his sister's work. The decision was announced poorly. The affected employees weren't given adequate notice or severance, and the remaining staff was left wondering if they'd be next. Within days, Bradford's Glassdoor rating dropped, and social media filled with complaints from former employees. I didn't gloat. I didn't comment. I just watched Marcus make himself look incompetent while I focused on building Sterling Tech properly. 3 of the fired Bradford employees called me. All 3 were talented, experienced, and angry about how they'd been treated. I hired 2 of them immediately and referred the 3rd to another company where I knew they'd be appreciated. I gave Bradford 6 years, one told me during her interview. I was loyal, I worked hard, and Marcus fired me without even a conversation. Just had HR email me a termination notice. That's not how you treat people. That's not how we treat people at Sterling Tech, I assured her. Here, you'll be valued for your contributions, not dismissed because someone needs to make themselves feel important. The Bradford exodus continued throughout the following weeks. Not a flood, but a steady trickle of talented people who'd grown frustrated with the old way of doing things and wanted to be part of something new. I was selective about who I hired, only taking people who fit Sterling Tech's culture and values. But the fact that Bradford employees wanted to work for me sent a clear message about whose leadership people respected. My father called me again 4 weeks after Sterling Tech's launch. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. Alexandra, we need to talk, in person, just you and me. About what? About ending this competition before it destroys both our companies. I agreed to meet him for lunch at a restaurant downtown, neutral territory where neither of us had the home field advantage. He was already there when I arrived, looking tired but determined. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "You said this was important." "It is. Alexandra, I want to make you an offer. Come back to Bradford, not as COO, but as co-CEO. You and Marcus would run the company together, equal partners. Your vision combined with his energy could make Bradford stronger than ever." I stared at him. "You're joking." "I'm completely serious. This competition between Bradford and Sterling Tech benefits no one. It's dividing the family, confusing clients, creating unnecessary conflict in the industry. If you come back, we can end this. And Sterling Tech, dissolve it, or merge it into Bradford. We can absorb your best people, integrate your innovations. Everyone wins." I leaned back, processing this. My father was scared enough to offer me what I'd wanted all along, leadership of Bradford Industries. But he was offering it in a way that still gave Marcus equal power, that required me to abandon what I'd built, that assumed Sterling Tech was a bargaining chip rather than a legitimate company. "No," I said simply. "You didn't even think about it. I don't need to. Dad, you're not offering me what I want. You're offering me what you're willing to give, which isn't the same thing. You want me to come back to Bradford, give up Sterling Tech, work alongside Marcus, who's already proven he doesn't respect me or my work. Why would I do that? Because we're family. Because Bradford is your legacy too. Because this competition is hurting both companies. Sterling Tech isn't hurting. We're growing. We're profitable. We're winning clients based on merit. If Bradford is hurting, that's because Marcus isn't capable of running it effectively. That's not my problem to solve. So you'll let the family business fail? Let your father lose his pension? Let everything I built crumble because of your pride? My pride? Dad, you gave my job to Marcus because of your pride. Because admitting a woman could run Bradford successfully would challenge your worldview. Now you want me to fix the consequences of that choice, but only in ways that don't require you to admit you were wrong. The waiter came to take our order. We both waved him away. What would it take, my father asked, finally, for you to come back, to end this? What would you need? I'd need you to acknowledge that you were wrong to pass me over. I'd need Marcus to step down completely, not share power but give it up. I'd need complete control of Bradford's operations and strategy. And I'd need you to respect Sterling Tech as a legitimate company, not something I have to sacrifice to earn your approval. That's impossible. Then we have nothing more to discuss. I stood to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just desperate. Alexandra, please. I'm asking you to think about your mother, about what this is doing to her. She's caught between us, trying to support both her children, and it's tearing her apart. Mom is an adult who's made her own choices. She chose to support your decision to give Bradford to Marcus. She chose to prioritize family harmony over justice. Those were her choices. I'm not responsible for managing her. I decided I'd rather be respected than liked. You taught me that lesson, Dad. You just didn't expect me to apply it to you. I left him sitting there and drove back to Sterling Tech's office. My hands were shaking, my heart racing. The conversation had been brutal, but necessary. My father needed to understand that I wasn't coming back, wasn't giving up, wasn't going to sacrifice what I'd built to make him comfortable. That afternoon, I called a team meeting. I want everyone to know that Bradford Industries approached me about shutting down Sterling Tech and returning to work there. I declined. This company is real, it's viable, and I'm committed to building it regardless of external pressure from my family or anyone else. If any of you have concerns about Sterling Tech's future, now's the time to voice them. Silence for a moment. Then Keisha spoke up. I left a stable job at a major firm to join Sterling Tech because I believe in what we're building. The fact that your father is scared enough to try to buy you out just confirms we're on the right track. Miguel nodded. Besides, working here is more fulfilling than anywhere I've been. We actually value innovation and people's ideas. I'm not going anywhere. One by one, each team member expressed their commitment. It was exactly what I needed to hear. That evening, Uncle Thomas called. I heard about your lunch with your father. He called me afterward, very upset. Said you refused a very generous offer. He offered me co-CEO with Marcus. That's not generous, it's manipulative. I agree, but Alexandra, I need to tell you something. Bradford's first quarter under Marcus's leadership was a disaster. Revenue down 18%. 2 major clients left for competitors. Employee morale at an all-time low. The board is already questioning whether Marcus is the right choice. Good. Maybe they'll realize merit should matter more than genetics. Maybe. Or maybe they'll just blame you for creating disruption in the market. Either way, you should know that your father's pension is genuinely at risk. If Bradford's performance doesn't improve by year end, he'll take a significant financial hit. You sound like you think I should care. I think you should be aware. Knowledge is power, even if you choose not to act on it. I thought about that after we hung up. My father's financial security was threatened because of his own poor decisions. I hadn't caused Bradford's decline. Marcus had done that all on his own through incompetence and bad judgment. But I also knew that if my father lost his pension, my family would blame me, not Marcus, not Dad's own choices. I'd be cast as the villain who destroyed her father's retirement out of spite. The narrative would be wrong, but narratives weren't about truth. They were about perception. 3 months after Sterling Tech's launch, we hit a milestone. 10 clients, 23 employees, $5 million in annual revenue. We were no longer a startup. We were a real company with a real future. I celebrated by taking the team out for dinner. A nice restaurant where we could relax and enjoy our success. Looking around the table, at these talented people who'd chosen to build something with me, I felt genuine pride. This was what I'd wanted. Not just financial success, but meaningful work with people who valued excellence and innovation. My phone buzzed during dinner. A text from my mother. "Your father had a small heart attack this afternoon. He's at City General Hospital. I thought you should know." I excused myself from the table and called her immediately. "Mom, is he okay?" "He's stable. The doctors say it was minor, just a warning. But Alexandra, the stress of everything with Bradford and Sterling Tech, it's affecting his health. You need to make peace with him before something worse happens." "Is he asking for me?" A pause. "No. He told me not to call you. But I thought you should know anyway." I felt a complex mix of emotions. Worry for my father's health. Guilt that my actions might have contributed to his stress. Anger that even now, from a hospital, and underneath it all, the persistent question, how much of myself was I supposed to sacrifice to maintain relationships with people who didn't respect me? "I'll come to the hospital," I said. "But Mom, I'm not apologizing for Sterling Tech. I'm not giving up what I've built. If Dad wants to reconcile, it has to be real, not just him trying to manipulate me into doing what he wants. He's in room 437, ICU. I drove to the hospital, my mind racing through scenarios. What if this was serious? What if my father died before we could resolve anything? Would I regret standing my ground? Or would I regret it more if I gave in now, undermined everything I'd fought for, just to have peace with a man who'd never truly valued my capabilities? The ICU was quiet, dim lighting and hushed voices. I found room 437 and paused outside, gathering my courage. Through the small window, I could see my father in the bed, looking small and vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. My mother sat beside him, holding his hand. I knocked softly and entered. Mom looked up, relief flooding her face. "Alexandra, thank God." My father's eye. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said carefully, "but I'm not going to pretend that Sterling Tech is the problem. Your health issues are about stress from multiple sources. Bradford's struggles under Marcus's leadership. Your pension being at risk. The fact that your assumptions about who could run a company successfully are being challenged by reality." "This is hardly the time," my mother started. "No, let her speak," my father said. "I want to hear how she—" "Get out." "Franklin," my mother tried. "Get out. Alexandra, I don't want you here. I don't want your pity, or your judgments, or your presence. You made your choice. Now live with it somewhere away from me." I stood slowly, fighting back tears. "I hope you recover quickly. Dad, I really do. But until you're ready to see me as someone worthy of respect, instead of just someone who should obey you, I don't think we have anything more to say to each other." I left before either of them could respond, before the tears could fall, before my resolve could weaken. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and cried. Grief for the relationship I'd wanted with my father, but would apparently never have. Anger that even from a hospital bed, he was more interested in being right than in reconciling with his daughter. Fear that he might die before we could fix this, and I'd have to live with that regret forever. But underneath all of it, certainty. I'd made the right choice. Bill, that's hard for a man like your father to accept. Uncle Thomas paused. But that's his problem, not yours. You keep building your company. You keep proving that women can lead, can innovate, can succeed. That's the best response to his doubts. My father was released from the hospital 3 days later, with instructions to reduce stress and take it easy. Marcus issued a company-wide email at Bradford announcing that their father's health scare was a reminder about work-life balance and family priorities. The subtext was clear. This was somehow my fault for creating conflict. The industry saw through it. I started receiving messages of support from colleagues, clients, even competitors who respected what I was building. "Don't let them guilt you," one CEO wrote. "You're doing what you should have been allowed to do years ago." Sterling Tech continued growing. By month 5, we'd expanded to 15 clients and 30 employees. We'd moved into a larger office space, hired a full-time HR director, and established partnerships with 3 major suppliers. Every metric pointed to sustainable success. Bradford, meanwhile, was struggling. Marcus had made several more bad decisions, launching a new product line without adequate market research, alienating a major client with his abrasive communication style, implementing cost-cutting measures that hurt employee morale. The company wasn't failing yet, but it was declining in ways that would be hard to reverse. My mother tried to stay neutral, but I could feel her pulling away. She'd call less frequently, and when we did talk, the conversations were strained and superficial. She was choosing her husband over her daughter, which I understood even if it hurt. My brother Marcus tried a different approach. He showed up at Sterling Tech's office 6 months after our launch, asking to speak with me privately. "What do you want?" I asked, leading him to a conference room. "I want to understand why you hate me so much that you'd destroy our family over it." I laughed, a bitter sound. "I don't hate you, Marcus. I barely think about you except when you make another bad decision at Bradford that gets reported in the industry news. You're trying to ruin Dad's company, the company he built for us, for our family. Dad built that company for himself. Any benefit to the family was secondary, and he decided to give it to you, not us. So if it fails, that's on you and Dad, not me. I'm trying my best. Are you?" I pulled up Bradford's quarterly reports on my laptop and turned the screen toward him. "You've cut employee benefits twice. You've lost 4 major clients. You've delayed 3 product launches because you couldn't make a decision. Employee satisfaction scores have dropped 30 points. The stock price is down 22%. That's not trying your best, Marcus. That's being in over your head and too proud to admit it." He stared at the screen, his face reddening. "I'm learning. It takes time to figure out how to run a company. It shouldn't take time to know not to fire experienced managers without cause. It shouldn't take time to understand that you need to listen to people who know more than you do. It shouldn't take time to realize that being the boss doesn't mean you're always right. Easy for you to say. You had 3 years of experience as COO before starting Sterling Tech. I was thrown into the CEO position with no preparation." "Exactly. That's on Dad, not me. He gave you a job you weren't qualified for because of your gender and his ego. Now you're failing. And instead of taking responsibility, you're blaming me for competing in the same market." Marcus stood abruptly. "You know what? You're right. I wasn't ready. Dad shouldn't have given me this responsibility. But you know what else? You could have stayed. You could have helped me learn. Instead, you abandoned the family and started a rival company out of spite. I didn't abandon anyone. I was pushed out. There's a difference. You were offered a senior position. I was offered a demotion from COO to special advisor after years of exemplary work. That's not a promotion, Marcus. That's a professional insult wrapped in family pressure." He walked to the door, then turned back. "Dad's pension is at risk because of Bradford's performance. If the company fails, he loses everything. You realize that, right? You're not just competing with me. You're threatening our father's retirement security. Dad chose to tie his pension to Bradford's performance because he was confident you'd succeed. He made that choice. He gets to live with the consequences. I'm not responsible for protecting him from his own bad judgment. You really don't care if he ends up broke? I care, but not enough to sacrifice my own success to save him from consequences he created. If Dad's financial security matters to you, maybe you should focus on running Bradford better instead of blaming me for your failures." After Marcus left, I sat in the conference room for a long time, thinking about what he'd said. Was I responsible for my father's potential financial ruin? Was there a moral obligation to protect family, even when they'd wronged you? I called Priya, my college roommate, that evening. We met for drinks at a wine bar near my apartment. Okay, be honest with me, I said after explaining the situation. Am I a terrible person for not caring if my father loses his pension? Priya sipped her wine, thinking. That's a complicated question. Are you actively trying to destroy Bradford? No. I'm building Sterling Tech. If that happens to compete with Bradford, that's capitalism, not personal vendetta. Then you're not a terrible person. You're a person who's refusing to be responsible for other people's bad decisions. Your father chose to give the company to Marcus. He chose to structure his pension the way he did. He chose to underestimate your capabilities and overestimate Marcus's. Those were his choices. But he's still my father. Yes, and he's still the man who publicly humiliated you by giving your legacy to your less qualified brother. You can love someone and still let them face the consequences of their actions. That's not cruelty, it's boundaries. I felt the tension in my shoulders ease slightly. I just don't want to be the kind of person who destroys her family over pride. Alexandra, you're not destroying anything. You're building something. There's a difference. If your family gets destroyed in the process, it's because the foundation was already cracked. You just made the cracks visible. We talked for 2 more hours, and by the end, I felt clearer about my choices. I wasn't going to apologize for Sterling Tech's success. I wasn't going to slow down or hold back to protect Bradford. But I also wasn't going to actively sabotage my father's company or celebrate its struggles. I'd compete fairly and let the market decide which company deserved to thrive. 8 months after Sterling Tech's launch, something unexpected happened. One of Bradford's board members called me directly. Ms. Bradford, this is Harold Chen from Bradford Industries Board of Directors. Do you have a moment to talk? I nearly dropped my phone. Harold Chen was the longest-serving board member, a man with tremendous influence in the manufacturing sector. Of course. What can I do for you? I'd like to meet with you, privately, to discuss Bradford's future and potential opportunities for resolution of the current situation between your company and your family's business. We met for breakfast 2 days later at his club, an old money establishment where deals were made over coffee and handshakes. Harold was 73, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, and sharp as ever. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down. I'll be direct. Bradford Industries is struggling under Marcus's leadership. The board is concerned. Your father is concerned, though he won't admit it publicly. And we're exploring options for how to address this situation before it becomes a crisis. What kind of options? Several. The board could remove Marcus as CEO and bring in outside leadership. We could merge Bradford with another company. We could restructure significantly. Or, he paused meaningfully, we could bring you back. I'm not interested in going back to Bradford, not as COO. As CEO, Marcus would be removed. Your father would retire completely. You would have full authority to run the company as you see fit. I sat back, processing this offer. The board was willing to give me what I'd wanted all along, complete control of Bradford Industries. But they were offering it now, after months of competition, after my father's heart attack, after irreparable damage to my family relationships. Why now? I asked. Because the board recognizes what your father refused to see. You're the better executive. Sterling Tech's success proves that. Bradford needs you more than you need Bradford. And my father? Does he know about this offer? He knows the board is exploring options. He doesn't know I'm meeting with you specifically. But Alexandra, if Bradford fails, your father loses his pension. Your family's legacy disappears. Your brother's career is destroyed. Is that really what you want? What I want is for my capabilities to have been recognized before I had to prove them by leaving and competing. What I want is for merit to matter more than gender. What I want is an apology from my father that I'll probably never get. So the answer is no? I thought about it carefully. Taking control of Bradford would mean leaving Sterling Tech, abandoning what I'd built, returning to a company where many people would see me as a consolation prize after Marcus failed. It would mean working with a board that had stood by silently while my father passed me over. It would mean repairing relationships that might be too broken to fix. Tell me something, Harold. When my father gave Bradford to Marcus instead of me, did you object? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I expressed concerns about Marcus's readiness, but you voted to approve the succession plan anyway. The board respects the founder's wishes regarding family succession, until those wishes start costing money and reputation. Then suddenly, merit matters again. I shook my head. Thank you for the offer, but no. I'm not interested in cleaning up Marcus's mess or saving my father from consequences he created. Sterling Tech is my company, built on my terms. Free from family politics and outdated assumptions. I'm not giving that up to go back to a place where I'll always be seen as the daughter who had to prove herself. You're sure? Completely. Harold nodded slowly. I respect that. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Bradford doesn't deserve you. After he left, I sat in that club for another hour, drinking coffee and thinking about roads not taken. Part of me wanted to accept the offer, retry a continue to reclaim what should have been mine from the beginning. But that part was getting smaller, quieter. Sterling Tech wasn't a consolation prize. It was better than Bradford had ever been. I called Uncle Thomas from the parking lot. Bradford's board just offered me the CEO position. Full control, Marcus removed, Dad retired completely. And you said, no. He laughed, genuine and surprised. Good for you. What changed your mind? I know you wanted Bradford once. I wanted my father's respect once. I wanted him to see me as worthy of his legacy. But I've built my own legacy now, one that doesn't depend on his approval. Going back would mean admitting that Sterling Tech was just a stepping stone, that I was waiting all along for Bradford to want me. I'm not giving anyone that narrative. Your father is going to hear about this offer. He'll know you turned it down. Good. Let him know that his company isn't valuable enough to tempt me away from what I've built. Maybe that'll teach him something about underestimating people. That evening, I called a special team meeting at Sterling Tech. 23 employees gathered in our conference room, wondering why I'd called everyone together so urgently. I wanted you all to hear this directly from me, I began. Bradford Industries board approached me today. They offered me the CEO position, full control of the company, Marcus removed. They basically offered me everything I originally wanted when I worked there. I saw concern flash across several faces. Keisha looked particularly worried. I turned it down, I continued, because Sterling Tech isn't a backup plan or a bargaining chip. This company is where I want to be, what I want to build. You all took a chance on joining a startup led by someone with a complicated family situation. I want you to know that I'm committed to Sterling Tech's future, regardless of what opportunities might come from elsewhere. The relief in the room was palpable. Miguel started clapping, and others joined in. It felt good being chosen by people who chose to be there, who weren't obligated by family or tradition or anything except mutual respect and shared vision. After the meeting, Keisha pulled me aside. Thank you for that. I've been worried that this whole thing was about you proving a point to your father. And once you proved it, you'd go back to Bradford, and we'd all be left without jobs. Sterling Tech is real, Keisha. It's not about my father anymore. It's about building something excellent that challenges how this industry operates. Then I have something to tell you. 2 Bradford managers reached out to me last week. They want to join Sterling Tech. Both are talented. Both are frustrated with Marcus's leadership. But I wasn't sure if we should hire them, given the family dynamics. Are they good at what they do? Exceptional. Then hire them. Sterling Tech succeeds by attracting the best talent, regardless of where they come from. If Bradford employees want to work here, that's Bradford's problem, not ours. Over the next 2 weeks, we hired 5 former Bradford employees. Each one came with stories of Marcus's incompetence, his refusal to listen to experienced staff, his habit of blaming others for his mistakes. The exodus was becoming a flood, and the industry was noticing. Business Journal headline: Brain drain at Bradford Industries as employees flock to daughter startup. My father called me after that article published. I almost didn't answer, but I was curious about what he'd say. "You're poaching my employees," he said without preamble. "I'm hiring talented people who are unhappy working for Marcus. That's not poaching. That's the free market. You're deliberately trying to destroy Bradford. I'm building Sterling Tech. If Bradford can't retain good employees, that's a Bradford problem. Maybe Marcus should ask himself why people are leaving instead of blaming me for hiring them." Harold told me about the offer. "You turned down the CEO position." "Yes. Why?" "Because I don't want to spend my career proving myself to people who should have believed in me from the start. Because Sterling Tech is mine in a way Bradford never would be. Because going back would mean admitting this was all about wanting your approval, and it stopped being about that months ago." He was quiet for a long moment. "Your mother misses you. Mom has my number. She can call anytime she wants to have a real conversation, instead of trying to guilt me into apologizing for my success. This isn't what I wanted, Alexandra. I didn't want our family torn apart." "Then you shouldn't have chosen Marcus over me. You shouldn't have publicly humiliated me by giving my legacy to someone less qualified. You shouldn't have dismissed my capabilities because of outdated beliefs about gender and leadership. Every consequence you're experiencing right now is the direct result of choices you made. I thought I was protecting you. No, you thought you were protecting your own ego. You couldn't handle the idea of a woman running your company. So you convinced yourself I needed protection from the responsibility I'd proven I could handle. That wasn't about me, Dad. It was always about you. So what now? We just stopped being a family? We stopped being a functional family the moment you chose tradition over fairness. I'm just the one who's being honest about it." I took a breath, softening slightly. "Dad, I don't hate you. I don't even want to hurt you. But I can't sacrifice my own success and well-being to maintain a relationship with someone who fundamentally doesn't respect me. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it starts with you acknowledging that you were wrong." Not about tactics or timing, but about the fundamental assumption that Marcus was better suited to lead than I was. And if I can't do that, then we have nothing more to talk about. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear or anger, from something else. Liberation, maybe. The final severing of the cord that had kept me tethered to my father's approval. 1 year after Sterling, the board had given him an ultimatum: turn things around in 6 months or be replaced. My father's pension had already been cut by 40%. Not enough to ruin him financially. He'd made good investments over the years, but enough to hurt. Enough to force him to reconsider some retirement plans. Enough to make him face the consequences of his choices every time he checked his bank balance. I felt surprisingly little satisfaction from that. I'd thought watching my father face those consequences would feel like vindication. Instead, it just felt sad. Like watching someone insist they could fly, and then being surprised when gravity worked exactly as expected. Uncle Thomas officially retired from Bradford and joined Sterling Tech as our CFO. His first day, I walked into the office to find him at the desk we'd prepared for him, already reviewing financial statements. "Welcome to Sterling Tech officially," I said. "Thank you for having me. This place feels different from Bradford. More energy, more optimism. People actually seem excited to come to work. That's what happens when you hire based on talent instead of politics. When you value innovation instead of tradition. When you treat employees like assets instead of expenses. Your father called me last night, asked me to reconsider, to come back to Bradford. Said the family needs to stick together in difficult times. What did you tell him? That I'd spent 40 years working for him, and now I wanted to work for someone who actually listened to advice. He didn't take it well. Over the following months, Bradford's situation deteriorated further. 2 more board members resigned. 3 major projects failed. A product recall cost the company millions. Marcus was visibly struggling, showing up to industry events looking exhausted and defensive. I saw him at a conference in November. He cornered me during a networking break, his face haggard. "I need help," he said without preamble. "Bradford is falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. I know you don't owe me anything, but I'm asking anyway. Please, Alex, help me save Dad's company." I looked at my younger brother, seeing him clearly for maybe the first time, not as a rival or an obstacle, but as someone who'd been set up to fail by a father who'd valued pride over his son's well-being. Marcus had never wanted to run Bradford. He'd wanted our father's approval, and running the company was the price Dad had demanded for it. "What kind of help are you asking for?" I said carefully. "I don't know. Advice? Consulting? Maybe Sterling Tech could partner with Bradford on some projects, help shore up our operations." "Marcus, Bradford doesn't need consulting. It needs competent leadership. And you're not providing that." I know I'm not good at this, but I can't just quit. Dad would be devastated. The family would be destroyed. The family is already destroyed. You're just delaying everyone having to acknowledge it. So you won't help? I can't help in the way you're asking. I can't prop up Bradford's operations while you remain CEO, pretending everything's fine. That wouldn't help anyone long-term, least of all you. Then what can you do? I can tell you what I think you should do, which is resign. Step down as CEO, let the board bring in someone competent, and figure out what you actually want to do with your career instead of performing a role you hate to please our father. He looked at me like I'd suggested he jump off a building. I can't do that. Why not? Because Dad sacrificed everything to build Bradford. Because it's the family legacy. Because I'm his son, and sons don't quit. Even when they're failing, even when their presence is actively harming the company. Marcus, you're not helping anyone by staying. Not Bradford, not the employees, not Dad, and definitely not yourself. You don't understand the pressure. You're right. I don't understand the pressure of being handed something I didn't earn and being expected to succeed anyway. But I do understand the pressure of having to prove myself constantly while being dismissed because of my gender. So maybe we're even on not understanding each other's experiences. He walked away without another word, and I felt a complicated mix of pity and frustration. Marcus was trapped in a cage of his father's making, and he didn't even see the door. 2 weeks later, Bradford Industries announced that Marcus was taking a temporary leave of absence for personal reasons. The board appointed an interim CEO, a seasoned executive from outside the family. Industry analysts called it a desperate but necessary move. My mother called me that night. "Your brother is devastated. He feels like a failure." "He is a failure, Mom. At running Bradford, at least. That's not a moral judgment. It's just a fact. He wasn't qualified for the job. Everyone knew it. And pretending otherwise helped no one. You could have helped him. I offered him advice. He didn't want to hear it. What else was I supposed to do? You could have been kinder. I was honest. In this situation, that's kinder than false encouragement would have been." She hung up shortly after, and I knew I'd disappointed her again. My mother had spent her whole life smoothing over conflicts, maintaining appearances, pretending everything was fine. She couldn't understand someone who'd rather face hard truths than comfortable lies. Sterling Tech celebrated our first anniversary with a company party. 53 employees, plus partners and family, gathered at a nice restaurant downtown. I gave a speech about what we'd accomplished and where we were heading. A year ago, Sterling Tech was just an idea, a belief that we could do things differently, better. That merit mattered more than tradition. That innovation was more valuable than, this is how we've always done it. You all took a chance on that idea. You left stable jobs or relocated or took pay cuts to be part of something new. And together, we've built something remarkable. I looked around the room at these faces, these people who'd chosen to work with me, who believed in the vision we were building. Thank you for taking that chance. Thank you for proving that excellence doesn't care about gender or family legacy or whose approval you have. Thank you for being part of Sterling Tech's first year. I can't wait to see what we build in year 2. The applause was genuine and warm. Keisha raised a glass. To Alexandra, who showed us that the best revenge is building something so successful that your detractors have to acknowledge it. Everyone laughed and drank, and I felt a surge of genuine happiness. This was success, not defeating my father or proving Marcus incompetent, but building something excellent with people who valued excellence. The party wound down around midnight. I was helping clean up when my phone rang. Uncle Thomas, Alexandra, you need to see this. Check Bradford's stock price. I pulled up the market on my phone. Bradford Industries stock had dropped 15% in after-hours trading. What happened? Bankruptcy rumor. Someone leaked that Bradford is considering filing for Chapter 11 protection. The board is denying it, but the damage is done. The stock is in free fall. Is it true, actually considering bankruptcy? I don't know, but even if it's false, the rumor alone might be enough to push them over the edge. If clients bail, if investors dump their stock, if employees start leaving en masse, Bradford could actually end up in the situation the rumor describes. I sat down heavily. Bradford Industries, the company my great-grandfather had founded, the company my father had built into a regional powerhouse, was potentially facing bankruptcy, and it had happened in just over a year under Marcus's leadership. How does this affect Dad's pension? I asked. If Bradford files for bankruptcy, his pension disappears completely. He'd get some settlement eventually, maybe 20 cents on the dollar, but his retirement income would be essentially gone. I closed my eyes. This was what I'd known could happen, what Uncle Thomas had warned me about a year ago. My father's financial security had been tied to Bradford's success, and Bradford was failing spectacularly. Alexandra? Uncle Thomas said, "You still there?" "Yeah, I'm here, just thinking. About whether I have any moral obligation to help prevent this. Do you want my opinion? Please. Your father made his choices. He gave Bradford to Marcus knowing Marcus wasn't qualified. He structured his pension assuming Bradford would thrive. He refused to see the warning signs until it was too late. You didn't cause this, Alexandra. You just didn't prevent it. There's a difference. But I could have prevented it. I could have accepted the board's offer. I could have gone back to Bradford as CEO and fixed Marcus's mistakes. At what cost? Your own company? Your team? Your self-respect? You would have saved your father's pension, but sacrificed everything you'd built. Is that trade worth it? I don't know. Then think about it. But think fast. If Bradford actually files for bankruptcy, there won't be anything left to save. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through scenarios and consequences. If I did nothing, Bradford might fail. My father would lose his pension, and I'd have to live with knowing I could have prevented it. If I intervened somehow, I'd be sacrificing my own principles and success to rescue people who'd never valued me. At home, I pulled out my laptop and started researching Bradford's financial situation, their debt load, their asset value, their market position. I looked at Sterling Tech's resources, our capital, our capacity to potentially acquire or merge with a struggling competitor. An idea started forming. Risky, complicated, potentially brilliant. At 2 a.m, I called Olivia Chen, my lawyer. She answered groggily. This better be important, Alexandra. How would you feel about Sterling Tech acquiring Bradford Industries? Silence. Then, I'm awake now. Tell me more. Over the next week, I worked with Olivia and Uncle Thomas to develop a proposal. Sterling Tech would acquire Bradford Industries in a merger that preserved the Bradford name and operations while bringing everything under Sterling Tech's management structure. The deal would save Bradford from bankruptcy, protect my father's pension, and consolidate two companies into a stronger single entity. But there would be conditions. I would be CEO of the merged company. Marcus would have no role in operations. The board would be restructured with new members who'd proven their commitment to merit-based leadership. And my father would have to publicly acknowledge that Sterling Tech's success had proven his assumptions about women's leadership capabilities were wrong. He'll never agree to that last part, Uncle Thomas said as we reviewed the proposal. Then the deal doesn't happen. I'm not saving Bradford just to let him continue believing he was right to pass me over. If he wants my help, he has to admit he was wrong. That's harsh. That's fair. I'm offering to save his company and his pension. The price is honesty and humility. If his pride is more important than his financial security, that's his choice to make. We presented the proposal to Bradford's board first, without my father present. They were desperate enough to love it. The acquisition would save jobs, preserve the Bradford name, and prevent a bankruptcy that would destroy everyone's equity. But how do we convince your father to agree? Harold Chen asked. The public acknowledgement clause will be a sticking point. That's not my problem to solve. If the board wants this deal, convince him. Or remove him from the decision-making process entirely. He's retired. His vote shouldn't matter more than the company's survival. The board scheduled a special meeting for the following week. All board members, my father, Marcus, and me. Uncle Thomas joined as Sterling Tech's CFO. Olivia attended as legal counsel. We gathered in Bradford's main conference room, the same room where I'd presented quarterly reports for 3 years. My father looked older, grayer, defeated. Marcus looked relieved, like he'd been waiting for someone to rescue him from a disaster he couldn't control. The board members looked determined and cautious. Thank you all for coming, Harold began. We're here to discuss a proposal from Sterling Tech Solutions regarding a potential acquisition of Bradford Industries. Alexandra, would you like to present? I stood, distributed copies of the proposal, and walked them through the terms. Financial structure, operational integration, leadership transition, employment guarantees. I was thorough, professional, answering questions with data and projections. When I reached the section about conditions, I paused. There's one non-financial condition that's essential to this deal. Franklin Bradford must publicly acknowledge that his decision to pass me over as CEO in favor of Marcus was based on gender bias rather than competence, and that Sterling Tech's success proves that women are equally capable of running companies in this industry. My father's face turned red. Absolutely not. I'm not admitting to something that isn't true. Then there's no deal. Bradford can proceed with bankruptcy proceedings. You can lose your pension. And everyone in this room can watch the company collapse because you're more invested in being right than in being honest. This is extortion. This is honesty. You gave Bradford to Marcus because he's male, not because he was more qualified, more experienced, or more capable. Because he had a penis, and I didn't. That's the truth. And if you want my help saving Bradford, you're going to admit it publicly. I gave the company to Marcus because I thought, don't. My voice was sharp. Don't lie to yourself or anyone else. You thought I couldn't handle it because I'm a woman. You told Uncle Thomas exactly that. I heard you. The business world is still a man's world, you said. You couldn't put me in a position where I'd constantly have to fight for respect I should automatically receive. Those were your words, not mine. He slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. You were eavesdropping. I was working late and overheard a conversation about my future. a future you are planning without my knowledge or input. I turned to the board. This condition is non-negotiable. If Mr. ... phone number details. Bradford can't be honest about his motivations, then I question his judgment on everything else. And I'm not investing Sterling Tech's resources into a company where the founder can't acknowledge basic truths. This is vindictive, my father said quietly. You're trying to humiliate me. I'm trying to tell the truth. If the truth humiliates you, that's something you should examine. Harold Chen cleared his throat. Franklin, I understand this is difficult. But the alternative is bankruptcy. Your pension disappears. Bradford's name disappears. Hundreds of employees lose their jobs. Is your pride really worth all that? It's not about pride. It's about integrity. What integrity? I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice anymore. You lied to me for years, promising me the company while planning to give it to Marcus all along. You publicly humiliated me at your retirement party by announcing Marcus's appointment without warning me. You've dismissed my accomplishments, undermined my credibility, and blamed me for Bradford's struggles that Marcus caused. Where was your integrity in any of that? The room was silent. My father looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time in years. I saw the moment something broke in him. The walls he'd built around his pride, finally cracking. You're right, he said, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. What? You're right. About all of it. He sat up straighter, looking around the room at the board members, at Marcus, at me. I gave Bradford to Marcus because he's male. I thought the business world wouldn't respect a female CEO, that clients would be uncomfortable, that leadership required masculine qualities that Alexandra didn't have. I was wrong about all of that, completely, demonstrably wrong. The silence in the room was absolute. Even Uncle Thomas, who'd expected this, looked stunned. Sterling Tech's success proves that women can run companies just as effectively as men, my father continued. Probably more effectively, given that Alexandra built a $20 million business in a year, while Marcus nearly bankrupted Bradford in the same time period. I let outdated beliefs and gender bias influence a decision that should have been based purely on competence. And I'm sorry, Alexandra. I'm sorry for not seeing your capabilities, for not valuing your contributions, for putting you in a position where you had to prove yourself by leaving and competing. You deserved better from me. I felt tears threatening, but pushed them back. Do you mean that? Or are you just saying it to get this deal done? I mean it. I've meant it for months, but I was too proud to admit it. Watching Sterling Tech succeed, while Bradford struggled, forced me to confront truths I didn't want to face. You were always the better choice. I just couldn't see it until it was too late. Marcus spoke for the first time. I'm sorry too, Alex. I knew I wasn't qualified. I should have said no when Dad offered me the position. But I wanted to make him proud, and I thought maybe I could learn fast enough. I was wrong. I failed the company and the family. I'm sorry. I sat down, overwhelmed by emotions I'd been suppressing for a year. Anger, grief, relief, validation, all flooding through me at once. Okay, I managed. Okay. Does that mean we have a deal? Harold asked gently. Yes. Sterling Tech will acquire Bradford Industries under the terms outlined in the proposal, but there's one addition. Marcus, I want you to stay on in a non-executive role. Something in business development or client relations. Something that uses your strengths, which are people skills and relationship building. You're not a CEO, but you could be valuable in the right position. Marcus looked surprised. You'd do that? After everything? You're my brother. You were put in an impossible situation and did your best. That's not worth punishing forever. But you'll report to someone else, and you'll have no decision-making authority over operations. Clear? Crystal. And thank you. The board voted unanimously to approve the acquisition. Lawyers would spend the next few weeks working out details, but the essential agreement was reached. Sterling Tech was acquiring Bradford Industries, saving the company, preserving jobs, and protecting my father's pension. After the meeting, my father asked to speak with me privately. We went to his old office, now Marcus's office, now soon to be someone else's office. "I don't know how to fix what I broke between us," he said, sitting heavily in his chair. "But I want to try, if you'll let me." I leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "It's going to take time, Dad. A lot of time. I can forgive you for making a bad decision, but I can't instantly forget a year of feeling dismissed, disrespected, and undervalued by the person whose approval I wanted most in the world. I understand. Whatever time you need, whatever I have to do to earn back your trust, I'll do it. Start by meaning what you said in there. About being wrong, about gender bias, about me deserving better. Don't just say those things to close a deal. Actually, believe them. I do believe them. Alexandra, watching you build Sterling Tech, seeing you lead with confidence and competence, learning that your team genuinely respects and likes working for you. It's changed how I see everything. I was wrong about so much, and I'm grateful, despite the pain this year caused all of us, that you forced me to confront those beliefs." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the weight of what had just happened. "Your mother will be relieved," he said finally. "She's been torn up about this whole situation, trying to support both of us, feeling like she had to choose sides. Tell her she doesn't have to choose anymore. Tell her we're rebuilding. Slowly, carefully, but rebuilding. I will." I left Bradford Industries that afternoon feeling lighter than I had in a year. The battle was over. Not won, exactly. More like everyone had finally stopped fighting and started being honest. The merger would take months to finalize, but the essential work was done. Sterling Tech's team celebrated that evening with champagne and relief. They'd worried that the acquisition would change the company culture, that Bradford's old ways would infect what we'd built. I assured them that wouldn't happen. "We're not becoming Bradford," I said. "Bradford is becoming us. We're keeping everything that makes Sterling Tech special: the merit-based hiring, the innovation focus, the respect for all employees, regardless of gender or background. Bradford's operations will be integrated into our culture, not the other way around." Keisha raised her glass. "To Alexandra, who proved that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so successful that they beg you to save them." Everyone laughed and drank, and I felt genuine joy for the first time in months. This was what success looked like. Not crushing my father or humiliating Marcus, but building something excellent and using that excellence to create positive change. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally let myself cry. For the relationship with my father that had been broken but might be repairable. For the year I'd spent being angry and hurt. For the family dynamics that had been permanently altered. For the version of myself who'd thought being nice and accommodating was the path to respect and belonging. But also for the strength I'd discovered in standing up for myself, for the company I'd built from nothing, for the people who'd chosen to work with me, for the proof that merit and competence mattered more than tradition and gender. I'd started this journey devastated by betrayal. I was ending it transformed by my response to that betrayal. Stronger, clearer, more certain of my own worth. The merger process took 4 months to complete. Lawyers negotiated details. Accountants analyzed finances. Operations teams planned integration strategies. Throughout it all, I maintained clear boundaries. Sterling Tech's culture and values would dominate the merged company. Bradford's outdated practices would be reformed or eliminated. The announcement, when it came, made headlines. Sterling Tech acquires Bradford Industries. Daughter saves father's company after being passed over for leadership. The media loved the story. Interviews, profiles, think pieces about women in leadership and family business dynamics. I did dozens of interviews, always focusing on the business case rather than the family drama. Sterling Tech had acquired a struggling competitor and was turning it around through better management. That was the story I wanted to tell. But I also didn't hide from the personal elements. When reporters asked about my father passing me over, I was honest. I was devastated at the time, but that devastation motivated me to build something of my own, something that proved his assumptions about women's leadership capabilities were wrong. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated is exceeding everyone's expectations. That quote got repeated everywhere. It ended up on motivational posters and business school presentations. I became an accidental symbol for women in business, a role I hadn't sought but tried to honor responsibly. My father kept his word about the public acknowledgement. He gave an interview to the Business Journal where he admitted, on record, that he'd let gender bias influence his decision to give Bradford to Marcus instead of me. He acknowledged that Sterling Tech's success proved he'd been wrong. He apologized publicly for underestimating his daughter. The interview went viral. Business leaders praised his honesty. Some criticized him for admitting to discrimination, but most saw it for what it was: a powerful man acknowledging he'd been wrong and learning from his mistakes. My mother called me the day that interview published. "Your father is getting a lot of attention from that article. Some of it is negative. I know, I've seen it. Are you okay with that, with him being criticized publicly?" "Mom, he chose to do that interview. He knew what the response would be. If he's willing to face those consequences to rebuild our relationship, then yes, I'm okay with it. I'm proud of both of you for finding a way forward that doesn't involve just pretending everything's fine." It was the first time she'd said she was proud of me in over a year. I felt tears threatening again. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot. Would you come to dinner this weekend? Just family. You, me, your father, Marcus. We could start rebuilding what was broken." I hesitated. The idea of a family dinner felt both necessary and terrifying. "Okay, but if it gets uncomfortable, I'm leaving. No guilting me into staying. Deal?" The dinner was awkward at first. No one knew quite what to say, how to act. But slowly, carefully, we found our way into conversation. Not about the merger or the company or the conflict, but about ordinary things. Mom's book club, Dad's golf game, Marcus's new job search. "I'm looking at positions in business development," Marcus told me, "something that uses my people skills without requiring me to make strategic decisions I'm not qualified to make. Any advice on companies I should look at?" "Actually, there might be a position at the merged company. Once we integrate Bradford and Sterling Tech, we'll need someone to manage client relationships and identify new business opportunities. If you're interested, I could set up an interview with our business development director." "You'd hire me? After everything?" "You're good with people, Marcus. You just shouldn't be running companies. There's no shame in that. Most people shouldn't run companies. The trick is figuring out where your strengths actually lie and pursuing that instead of trying to be someone you're not." "I'd like that interview. Thank you." We made it through dinner without any major conflicts. It wasn't perfect. We were all still processing too much for perfection. But it was real, honest, a start. Over the following months, I worked on integrating Bradford into Sterling Tech's operations. We kept the Bradford name for certain legacy products and client relationships, but everything operated under Sterling Tech's management structure and culture. I brought in Bradford's most talented employees, let go of those who couldn't adapt to our merit-based approach, and rebuilt departments from the ground up. Marcus did get that interview, and he got the job. He was good at it, charming clients, building relationships, identifying opportunities. In a role that suited his strengths, he actually thrived. We developed a workable sibling relationship, professional and cordial, if not exactly close. My father retired completely this time, focusing on golf and travel and spending time with my mother. His pension was restored to its original amount after the merger stabilized Bradford's finances. He'd lost a year of full income, but that was his only lasting financial consequence. We had lunch together once a month, my father and I, working on rebuilding our relationship. It was slow progress. Years of hurt didn't disappear just because he'd apologized, but we were trying, both of us, to find a new way of relating that didn't depend on traditional father-daughter hierarchies. "I'm learning a lot about unconscious bias," he told me during one lunch. "I've been reading books, attending seminars. It's humbling, realizing how much my worldview was shaped by assumptions I never questioned." "Better late than never," I said. "Is it though? Better late? Or just less bad than never?" "Dad, you're doing the work now. You're changing. You apologized publicly and meant it. That's more than a lot of men in your position would do. Give yourself credit for that." He smiled slightly. "When did you become so wise?" "When I had to become strong enough to stand up to you." Sterling Tech Bradford, as the merged company was officially known, thrived. In the first year after the merger, we grew to 120 employees, 47 clients, and $63 million in revenue. We won industry awards for innovation and workplace culture. We were regularly listed as one of the best places to work in our sector. I was promoted from CEO to chairman and CEO, a role that recognized both my leadership of the company and my ownership stake. Uncle Thomas remained CFO. Keisha became Chief Operating Officer, the position I'd held at Bradford so many years ago. Miguel led our technology division. We'd built something remarkable, not just a successful company, but a model for how businesses could operate when they valued merit over tradition, innovation over "this is how we've always done it," and people over profits. 2 years after Sterling Tech's initial launch, I was invited to speak at a women's business conference. The ballroom was packed with hundreds of women entrepreneurs, executives, and professionals. I stood on that stage, looking out at all those faces, and felt the weight of my story. "I'm going to tell you something that might sound harsh," I began, "but it's true. Sometimes the people who love you will underestimate you. Sometimes they'll dismiss your capabilities because of their own biases. Sometimes they'll hurt you, not because they're evil, but because they're limited by their own beliefs about what's possible." I paused, letting that sink in. When that happens, you have two choices. You can accept their limitations as your reality, or you can prove them wrong. Not to punish them, though that might be satisfying, but to show yourself and everyone watching that their beliefs about your limitations don't define your actual capabilities. I told them my story. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. My father passing me over for my less qualified brother. The pain of being dismissed. The decision to build Sterling Tech. The year of competition and family conflict. The merger that saved Bradford while proving my worth. "Here's what I learned," I continued. "The best revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's building something so successful, so undeniable, that they have no choice but to acknowledge they were wrong." My father said women don't run businesses. Now his pension depends on mine. That's not cruelty. That's consequences meeting choices. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. But here's the most important part. I didn't build Sterling Tech to punish my father. I built it because I deserved to lead, regardless of his beliefs. The company's success isn't about him. It's about me and the talented people who chose to work with me. It's about proving that merit matters more than gender, that innovation beats tradition, that courage to stand up for yourself creates opportunities that accommodation never will. The applause started before I finished, building to a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Afterward, dozens of women approached me with their own stories. daughters passed over for sons. Female executives dismissed by male boards. Talented women told they weren't leadership material. "What you did gives me hope," one woman said. "I've been afraid to leave my company and start my own because of what people will think, what my family will say. But you showed me that sometimes leaving is the only way to prove your worth. Just make sure you're leaving for the right reasons," I told her. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Not to hurt anyone, but to build something excellent. The revenge part is just a bonus. She laughed, and I saw the determination in her eyes. She'd make it work, whatever she decided to do. That evening, I returned to my hotel room exhausted but energized. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 43 messages. I'd become someone people wanted to talk to, wanted advice from, wanted to work with. It was both flattering and overwhelming. One message caught my attention, from my father. "Watched your speech online. You were magnificent. I'm proud of you. Not just for saving Bradford, but for having the courage to stand up to me when I was wrong. Love, Dad." I read it 3 times, feeling emotions I'd worked hard to keep controlled. 2 years ago, I'd craved his approval desperately. Now I had it, but it felt different than I'd expected. Meaningful, yes, but not essential. I'd learned to value my own assessment of my worth more than anyone else's, even his. I texted back, "Thank you. Love you too." Simple, honest, enough. 3 years after that retirement party where my father had announced Marcus as his successor, I stood in the same study where I'd been blocked from the family group chat. But this time, everything was different. The room was full of Bradford Sterling employees celebrating another record-breaking quarter. My father was there, healthy and engaged. My mother stood beside him, smiling genuinely. Marcus chatted with Keisha about a client opportunity. Uncle Thomas laughed with Miguel about something technical. We'd rebuilt what had been broken. Not into the same shape, that was impossible, but into something stronger, more honest, more sustainable. "Can I have everyone's attention?" I said, tapping my glass. The room quieted. "I want to thank you all for being here. 3 years ago, this company didn't exist. Sterling Tech was just an idea I was developing in secret because I'd been passed over for a promotion I'd earned. Today, we're a $63 million business with offices in 3 cities and a reputation for excellence that's recognized across the industry." I looked around at the faces watching me. I couldn't have done this alone. Every person in this room contributed to our success. You believed in merit over tradition. You chose excellence over "this is how we've always done it." You built a company culture that values people for their capabilities, not their gender or their last name or who they know. Someone started clapping. Others joined in. I waited for it to quiet before continuing. But I also want to acknowledge something difficult. This company was born from conflict. From my father deciding based on gender bias instead of competence. From me being angry enough about that decision to compete instead of accommodating. From a year of family warfare that hurt everyone involved. My father was watching me intently, his expression unreadable. That conflict was painful. It damaged relationships. It cost my father financially and emotionally. It forced my brother to confront his own limitations. It put my mother in an impossible position. And it required me to choose my own success over family peace. I paused. I'd do it again. Not because I wanted to hurt anyone, but because I deserved better than being dismissed because of my gender. We all deserve better than that. The room was absolutely silent now. So here's what I want to say to everyone watching this journey. Everyone who's been passed over, or dismissed, or told they're not good enough because of who they are, rather than what they're capable of. Stand up for yourself. Build something excellent. Prove the doubters wrong, not through arguments, but through undeniable success. And when you do, be gracious in victory. Give people the chance to acknowledge their mistakes and grow from them. I looked directly at my father, because the goal isn't to destroy the people who underestimate you. The goal is to build a world where people stop underestimating others based on irrelevant characteristics, where merit actually matters more than tradition, where everyone gets the chance to prove their capabilities rather than having to fight for the opportunity. My father stood and walked over to me. For a moment, I wasn't sure what he was doing. Then he pulled me into a hug, right there in front of everyone. "I'm sorry," he whispered, so only I could hear, "for everything, for taking so long to see what was always obvious, for almost losing you because of my own stubborn pride. I know, Dad, and I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger was hurting me more than it was hurting you." We stood like that for a moment, father and daughter, finding our way back to something that resembled the relationship we'd had before everything fell apart. When we separated, I turned back to the room. "Enough serious talk. This is a celebration. We hit our quarterly targets. We won 2 major new clients, and we were just named one of the best places to work in our industry for the 3rd year running. Drink, eat, celebrate what we've built together." The party continued for another 2 hours. I circulated, talking to employees, thanking people for their contributions, making sure everyone felt valued. This was what leadership looked like when it was done right. Not commanding from on high, but being present, engaged, genuinely caring about the people who made success possible. Later, after most people had left, I found myself on the back patio with Uncle Thomas and Keisha. "You've come a long way from that angry woman who showed up in my office 3 years ago," Uncle Thomas said. "I remember you were so hurt, so determined to prove your father wrong. Now you've done that and more. I'm not that different. Still angry about injustice. Still determined to prove doubters wrong. I just channel it better now." "That's called growth," Keisha said. "You learned how to be strong without being cruel, how to compete without being petty, how to win without making others lose unnecessarily. Those are hard lessons. I had good teachers. I raised my glass to both of them. Thank you for believing in me when I was just an angry COO with a business plan and a lot of hurt feelings." "We didn't believe in your hurt feelings," Uncle Thomas said. "We believed in your capabilities. There's a difference." Inside, I could see my father and Marcus talking. Actually talking instead of the awkward silence that had characterized their relationship for years. Marcus had found his place in a role that suited him. My father had learned to let go of expectations that had never been fair. They were both better for it. My mother joined us on the patio. "Alexandra, can we talk?" "Of course." We walked to the far end of the patio, away from the others. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. "I owe you an apology," she said, "for not standing up for you when your father decided to give the company to Marcus, for choosing to keep the peace instead of choosing what was right, for making you feel like you had to handle everything alone." "Mom, no. Let me finish. I spent so much of my life being the peacemaker, smoothing over conflicts, making sure everyone got along. I thought that was what good wives and mothers did. But watching what you went through, seeing the cost of my silence, I realized I was enabling injustice in the name of harmony. That's not something to be proud of." "What changed? Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I've been going to therapy, working through my own issues with conflict and accommodation and people-pleasing. And I've learned that sometimes love means standing up for people, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. I should have done that for you 3 years ago. I'm sorry I didn't." I hugged her, feeling tears threaten again. "Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Your father isn't the only one who had to learn and grow from this situation. I did too. We all did." We stood together, watching the city lights, mother and daughter, finding a new kind of relationship built on honesty instead of pretense. The next morning, I woke to an email from Business Weekly magazine. They wanted to feature me on their cover for an issue about women in leadership. The headline they proposed: When Merit Meets Tradition, how Alexandra Bradford built an empire after being passed over for the family business. I called Olivia to discuss it. What do you think? Is it worth doing? Or will it just rehash old family drama? I think you control the narrative. You tell them what you want emphasized. Sterling Tech's success, the importance of merit-based leadership, the lessons learned about standing up for yourself. The family drama is context, not the main story. Okay, let's do it. The photo shoot was 2 weeks later, professional but not stuffy. They photographed me in Sterling Tech's office, surrounded by my team, looking confident and capable. They interviewed me for 3 hours, asking about everything from my management philosophy to my relationship with my father. What would you say to young women who are in similar situations? The interviewer asked. Passed over because of gender? Watching less qualified men get opportunities they deserve? I'd say document everything. Build your case. Know your worth, and then make a choice. You can stay and fight for recognition within a system that doesn't value you. Or you can leave and build something of your own. Both are valid choices, but they require different strategies and different mental frameworks. And family businesses specifically? Any advice there? Family businesses are complicated because business decisions become personal, but the principles are the same. If your family won't recognize your capabilities, you have to recognize them yourself. And sometimes that means walking away from the family business to build something that actually reflects your talents. Do you have regrets about how everything happened? I thought about that carefully. I regret that it had to happen this way. I wish my father had recognized my capabilities before I had to prove them by leaving. I wish Marcus had never been put in a position he wasn't qualified for. I wish my family hadn't had to go through a year of conflict and pain. But do I regret standing up for myself and building Sterling Tech? No, not for a second. The article came out 6 weeks later. The cover photo showed me in Sterling Tech's office, surrounded by awards and achievements, looking directly at the camera with confidence. The headline, "The Best Revenge is Success: How Alexandra Bradford Proved Her Father Wrong." Inside, the article was thorough and fair. They included my father's perspective, his admission of gender bias, his acknowledgement that he'd been wrong. They talked about Sterling Tech's success, the merger with Bradford, the lessons learned by everyone involved. It was everything I'd hoped for, a story about redemption and growth, not just about conflict and revenge. My father called after he read it. That was a good article. Fair. You represented everyone well, even me. I tried to be honest without being cruel. That's the balance I'm always going for. You've mastered it better than I ever did. Alexandra, I want you to know something. I'm prouder of you now than I would have been if you'd just taken over Bradford when I retired. Because you didn't just inherit success, you built it from nothing. That takes a level of courage and capability that I'm not sure I ever had. Thanks, Dad. That means more than you know. I mean it. You're a better leader than I ever was. A better person too, probably. The company is in good hands. After we hung up, I sat in my office thinking about journeys and destinations, about what I'd lost and what I'd gained. I'd lost the simple father-daughter relationship I'd once had, the naive belief that family would always choose fairness over tradition. But I'd gained self-respect, a company I was proud of, and relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation. That seemed like a good trade. 5 years after my father had announced Marcus as his successor, Sterling Tech Bradford was worth $200 million. We'd expanded internationally, opened 7 regional offices, and employed over 300 people. I'd been named to several 40 under 40 lists, and invited to speak at conferences around the world. But the success I was proudest of wasn't measured in revenue or recognition. It was measured in the stories I heard from women who'd left companies that didn't value them and started their own ventures. Women who'd stood up to family members and demanded recognition. Women who'd chosen self-respect over accommodation. You gave me permission to be ambitious, one woman told me at a conference. I'd been taught my whole life that women should be supportive, not competitive. That wanting to lead was somehow unfeminine. Your story showed me that ambition isn't a flaw, it's a strength. Those were the moments that mattered. Not the cover stories or the revenue numbers, but the knowledge that my struggle had made someone else's journey a little easier. My father and I had rebuilt our relationship into something healthier than before. We had lunch every other week, talking about business and life and the lessons we both learned. He'd become an advocate for women in leadership, speaking at events about his own journey from bias to understanding. I was wrong, he'd say in these speeches. Not just wrong about Alexandra specifically, but wrong about women's capabilities generally. I let cultural conditioning override evidence. I chose tradition over merit, and it cost me a year of relationship with my daughter and nearly destroyed the company I'd spent my life building. Don't make my mistakes. Question your assumptions. Listen to evidence that contradicts your beliefs. Value people for their capabilities, not their gender. It was powerful hearing him say those things publicly. Powerful because it was genuine, not just performance. Marcus had found his niche in business development and was genuinely good at it. We'd developed a workable sibling relationship, not as close as we'd been as children, but honest and respectful. He'd recently gotten engaged to someone who appreciated him for who he was, not who he'd been expected to be. Thank you, he'd told me at a family dinner a few months earlier, for seeing that I was in the wrong role and helping me find the right one. I was miserable trying to be CEO. No, I actually enjoy my work. Everyone deserves to do work that suits their strengths, I'd said. There's no shame in not being qualified for a particular job. The shame is in pretending you are and failing as a result. My mother had become more independent, taking classes, traveling, rediscovering parts of herself she'd suppressed during decades of being the family peacemaker. She'd started volunteering with a women's business incubator, mentoring female entrepreneurs. I'm learning what you learned, she told me, that accommodation isn't the same as kindness, that sometimes supporting people means challenging them, not enabling their mistakes, that real love involves honesty, even when honesty is uncomfortable. As for me, I'd learned that revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about construction, building something so successful that denial became impossible, proving worth not through arguments but through undeniable achievement, creating a legacy that spoke louder than any speech or explanation ever could. My father had said women don't run businesses. Now his pension depended on mine. But more importantly, now he knew he'd been wrong. Not just intellectually, but in the deep, honest way that comes from having your beliefs challenged by reality and accepting the lesson. That was the real victory. Not financial success, though that mattered. Not public recognition, though that validated the struggle. But the knowledge that I'd changed minds, challenged assumptions, and made the world slightly better for the women who'd come after me. I stood in my office late one evening, 5 years after everything had started, looking out at the city lights. Sterling Tech's logo glowed on the building across the street. The company I built from anger and ambition and determination had become something larger than my personal story. It was proof that merit mattered, that standing up for yourself created opportunities, that the best response to being underestimated was exceeding everyone's expectations. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. Board meeting tomorrow at 10. Don't be late. Love you, kiddo. I smiled. He called me kiddo again, something he hadn't done in years. It felt like closure of a kind, like we'd come full circle and found our way back to something that resembled what we'd had before, but stronger, more honest, built on respect instead of just biology. I typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Love you too, Dad." The story that had begun with betrayal and hurt had ended with understanding and growth. Not a fairy tale ending where everything was perfect, but a real ending where people learned from mistakes, grew from conflict, and built something better from the pieces of what had been broken. My father had said women don't run businesses. I'd proved him wrong by building one that saved his pension and his legacy. But more than that, I proved wrong every outdated assumption about what women could accomplish when given the chance to lead on their own terms. That was the revenge I'd chosen. Not destruction, but construction. Not cruelty, but competence. Not proving someone wrong for the sake of it, but proving myself right in the most undeniable way possible, through sustained, excellent, undeniable success. And it was the sweetest victory I could have imagined.